What up, Chicken Nuggets? Welcome to the Sports Cards Are Dope podcast. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about some negotiation tactics if you're walking up to a table or trying to make a deal on a used car, whatever it is. But we're going to focus on the sports card side of negotiations. And the big thing I want to talk about, the theme for today's video, is that deals don't start with dollars. They start with conversations. So let's jump into it. All right, so thank you first off for joining in, tuning in, like, subscribe if you want to, no pressure. Dab on them haters. Don't say that, Tyler. Sorry about that. So I thought to myself, one of the big things that I get a lot of conversations about is negotiation techniques when you're working a deal at a table. Because I remember for me personally, when I would walk up tables for, a while, and I'm an adult, especially if you're like younger and you're just getting used to this and the transactions of money, it's stressful. It is a stressful thing to do as a buyer and a seller. And so the tips I'm going to give you is not, oh, this is how you get one over on people. No, it's how do you have the best version of a deal possible. Does that mean they're all going to work out? No, not always. But hopefully, if you do some of these tactics, they're going to work out more in your favor than not. At the very least, you'll come out of it and you'll have a decent relationship with the dealer. And hopefully, maybe in the future, after they see you a couple times, they can start leveraging that relationship to get more cards that you want or make more sales that you want. So my thought was I broke this up into a 6-video series, unless I change my mind and expand it. But the first one that I want to talk about, this is the psychology of negotiation. And the first episode is on reading the room. How do we read the room and set a good foundation of a relationship with a dealer or someone we're trying to do a deal with? Now, whenever I try to break down stuff, this is the same way whenever my main job is like, helping educators, teaching teachers on stuff. And when I present, I try to hit the golden circle. It's by Simon Sinek. And it's the why, the what, and the how. So if you've never read Starts With Why, it's a book I highly recommend. So each of these breakdowns I'm going to give you the why, the what, and the how of that portion of the negotiation. So we're looking at reading the room. How do we set the table with these dealers? And the other thing that I'm getting a lot of these skills and techniques is from another book that I just love. Been reading it multiple times every year. It's the best communication negotiation book I've ever read. I highly recommend it. It's by Chris Voss, V-O-S-S, and it's called Never Split the Difference. So a lot of what I'm going to give you, I'm pulling from his tactics and his terminology. And so I'll try to summarize it and then apply it to sports cards. So the first thing I want to talk about is the why. Why does it matter to read the room? Why does it matter to lay the table right before you, not the table with the cards, but why is it important? Why does it matter to go out and read that dealer and figure out how to communicate with them? The reason is because people do business with people that they trust. Like, yes, you can go up to a table and there's a price on it and you can pay it. Or you can ask them a lower price and they'll sell. They might sell, they might not. But more often than not, people like working with people that they like, people that they feel comfortable with, people they don't feel are going to scam them and they're going to work with them. Think of it this way. If you've ever been to a certain show multiple times, there's probably dealers that set up there often. How is your relationship? How's the communication with those dealers? It's weird because this might not be anybody. You might not know their last name. Oh, that's Bob, or oh, that's the 90s vintage guy. Like a lot of people I know by what they sell more than their name or where they're from or anything like that. And it's because that's what we talk about. When I go to their table, you see their cards on their table and it sparks conversation. I got friends and they set up at some bigger shows, and those dudes, I've sat up at shows with them and they'll be across the thing. And I'll go see their cards and I'll look up some comps and I'm like, dude, I'm thinking in my head, you're way over comps. But they sell out their table every single time. And I was like, how do you do it? Like, I've got myself under comps and I'm just getting glances and walk-ons. But they sell every card at their table and they're selling out their whole table. More often than not, it's because, and this is what they tell me, it's because I have repeat buyers. People that have bought from me before, we don't have to go through that whole, like, are you trying to rip me off? Am I trying to rip you off? They have that relationship, so these people lean in and trust them more often than they have that fear of you're going to rip me off. So get to know people, learn their names, repeat their names. That's not a Chris Voss technique. I think it's how to win friends and influence people. Say people's name back to them. This is just a little bonus tip. When you see, so often if you're like me, as soon as you meet somebody, you shake their hand, you're like, what's your name? They say their name. Literally 10 seconds later, you're like, my brain just went and clicked that like circle with the arrow, the refresh button in my brain. I have no idea what their name is. Say their name back to them. Say their name back to them. And if you can come up with some mnemonic device, you're like Michael Scott from The Office, whatever in your head, try to come up with a way to remember their name and say it back to them as frequently. Like you meet them, hey, what's up? What's your name? Jim. Jim, I'm Tyler. Oh, awesome. Great to meet you, Jim. Jim, I really appreciate you taking the time to let me look at your cards. Say their name, not to like a weird amount, but say their name, insert it every 2 or 3 sentences, say it back to them. It makes people feel seen because more people in this world have no clue what somebody's name is 10, 20 seconds after they meet them, okay? And then one of the things too that you have to keep in mind, when you walk up to a table, these dealers are gonna have their walls up. They're gonna have walls up because everyone in these shows is trying to haggle and get the best price on the best card. There's dealers that are terrified that they've got a $1,000 card chilling at their table and they don't know and they got it priced at $10. I say this as someone who sold an $800 card or $500 card for $5 at my first show I ever set up at. So these dealers are terrified, and they not terrified, but they're anticipating that haggle, and everybody's just like has this mode of trying not to get ripped off. And that's not the mode you want to walk into it with. And so one of the things that you can do is learn to start the conversation, use some of these tips in the conversation to help that dealer or that person on the other side of the table feel seen and understood. Everybody, and I do this in my talks when I talk to teachers, and I'm talking about students and how they interact with them. And very often when I'm speaking, and I tell this story about a student when I was a principal, that he got into a lot of altercations with other educators, and he'd pop back at him and say some rude stuff. And one of the things that he had gotten used to his whole life with his parents and his teachers and everybody he'd interact with that was an adult, this young man would very often get defensive because he never got to say his side of the story. They would see him doing something wrong, or they would assume he was doing something wrong because he very often did stuff wrong. And they would just start accusing him or telling me what he should have, shouldn't done right. One of the tactics I took with him as a principal was, even if I knew the situation, I had video footage of what he did wrong. I've got 10 signed documentation pieces from everybody in the room. I don't care if I have drone footage of what that kid did. The first thing I did when he walked in my office was I go, hey man, tell me your side of the story. And he let him say it because people want to be seen and understood. I don't care if you're 5, 55, or 85. You want to be seen and understood. Dealers, I've sat on the other side of the table. If you've ever sat on the other side of a table at a show, you know that feeling when someone walks up, glances at your cards, and keeps walking. And I've reminded my buddies, like, don't get offended. Like, you do that to people too. They just probably don't have the cards you're willing to stop that you're not familiar with. And so don't get offended when they do that. But on the same side, you got to remember these dealers watch people walk by them all day that they're like, oh man, they don't want to buy anything. They don't want to buy anything. And some of those dealers are like, I came to the show, I paid this much money for this hotel and to drive here, and I bought these cards. I want to sell something. I paid for this table. So keep in mind, you're doing deals with people, not with cardboard, okay? Yes, the cardboard is the exchange, but that's not what you're doing. It starts with that dealer feeling understood. So what are some tips to help them feel understood? So here's the what. That was the why, because they want to be understood. Here's the what, okay? And this is the first tip this Voss has. There's one of my favorite Voss tips. It's called mirroring. Very often when we're having a conversation with someone, it's like they say something and we don't know what to say after that. Like we don't know how to link that to something else. I know there's like my parents' generation. Their way of responding, if I tell my mom a story, the next thing she's going to do is she's going to tell a story she knows about someone else that is related to something I talked about. Whereas me as the storyteller, I want to keep talking about my story. I just told you a whole story about something. I want you to elaborate or ask questions on it. But one of the hard things for us as communicators, people talking to other people, is that it's like some stories they get to the end of and it's like all you want to say is like, oh, that's cool or awesome. And like it feels so flat to the other people, even though you're saying something encouraging or that's dope or that's awesome. It can feel encouraging, but you're not elaborating and you're not building off of it. And so here's a tip that people use in communication. It is called mirroring. Okay, this technique is called mirroring. What you're doing is you're repeating back their last 1 to 3 words that they said. So you walk up to a table, you're talking to the dealer, and he's like, yeah, I just bought this Kobe for $80,000. And you go, bought a Kobe for $8,000. Or they're like, oh, I just got this King Griffey Jr. card, and it's signed by King Griffey Jr. You go, signed, and you repeat back, signed by Ken Griffey Jr. All I'm doing is I'm saying the last 1 to 3 words of what they said, but I'm saying it in a way that's saying I'm engaged in your story. And it's almost like, it's not like saying, hey, tell me more, but that's what their brain hears. When you repeat back those last few words of what they said, they're going to naturally want to expand on it. And so it's almost like asking a question without having to think of a question. You're literally just repeating back the last few words, and then they can expand upon that. The next thing, so that's mirroring. You're saying the last 1 to 3 words, but in a tone that's like, I'm listening to you and I'm showing you I'm listening to you. Because so many times, and this is not just for dealers at shows, but in conversations with other people, I call it autopilot. Have you ever like been talking to someone and you can tell like their eyes turn into like a glazed donut and you're like, this person is no longer listening to me talk. I blame this on the reason that I talk so fast is because instead of making myself, because I'm like very self-aware, I'm very aware of my surroundings. And when I see someone losing interest as a kid, I didn't just become more interesting. I just talked faster to get it out, which is not a good thing. Don't do it, but I'm stuck. I talk too fast. I'm sorry. But whenever you're doing that, you're mirroring those last few words and you're showing, hey, I'm listening to you. Even if you're not saying anything off of that and you're not just giving that, oh, that's cool, like at the end, like everybody's mom does when they tell them a story. All right, the next tip, next what you can use is called labeling. And this is an easy one. All you're doing is calling out what you're seeing them say, okay? So like if they're talking about a card and they're like, oh my gosh, I hunted this card for, you're like, oh, what about this card? And they're like, oh, I love this card. I had this card. I've had this card since I was a kid. I opened it up out of a pack with my dad and I just was going through my collection. I was like, man, I got to trim it out. And this is one of the cards I put out there, okay? You don't want your next thing you say to be like, okay, cool. Can you do $20? Like you don't want your next thing you say to be asking for that price. You don't want it to be hitting on that number. What you want to do is, again, help them feel seen and understood. So what labeling does is you are calling out the emotion or the feeling that you see. So if that dealer's like, yeah, I pulled this card in a pack with my dad when I was a kid and I kept it for 20 years and I just figured it was time to sell it. Your response might be, it sounds like that card means a lot to you. You are now making them, they had an emotion when they were telling that part of their story. And what you're doing is you're labeling that emotion. I see the emotion that's most evoking you. I see that this is going to be a hard card for you to sell. And yes, you're thinking, well, you don't want to call attention to it being a card they really care about. Okay? What you're doing is you're saying, I understand and see the feelings that you're having in this. And it's almost like they feel understood. And so it's like, that feeling of when you sell to somebody who's like a big time collector versus like a flipper. Like a lot of dealers feel better because they're like, it's going to a good home. It's going to a good collector. So it's like they feel better even though they probably made less money on it or maybe they sold it for a discount. It's because they feel good about it because that person showed them a perspective of where that card that they cared about is going because that person understands the value and the meaning of that card that they had, okay? Or like if they're like, I don't know if I can do that amount, what you could say, it looks like you're worried about letting this card go. And then you let it sit. That's another technique we'll talk about later, but you let it sit. Don't feel like you have to fill the conversation like I do every time I do anything. It's my fault for recording too many podcasts and YouTube videos. I just fill the dead space and something I have to actively work against. But it's like you're saying, I'm calling out that emotion. Remember the labeling? Oh, this card, I've had this for a long time. It's going to be tough to let go for less than $30. I'm not addressing the number. I'm just going to say, it sounds like that it would be a hard card to let go. I can see why you like it so much. You're essentially labeling their emotions and their feelings in that process. And the last one, and this is one of the great Chris Voss moves, it's called tactical empathy. I'll say it again. So we've used mirroring, repeating the last few words. We're doing labeling. We're calling out and explaining their emotion back to them. Okay, you're summarizing it back to them, what it sounds like they're feeling. And then tactical empathy. This is acknowledging their feelings without agreeing to it. I'm gonna say that again. Sorry. Your tactical empathy is you're acknowledging their feelings without agreeing to it. You don't agree with this price because you're trying to get it for a lower price, but you're acknowledging how they feel about the amount they want, okay? The empathy is not, oh, you're right. It's, I understand and see where you're coming from. Again, do you see how all these mirroring, labeling, and even tactical empathy is about understanding the other person and where they're coming from? It's all about them. It's not about, and this is the big thing, and this is with any conflict you have in your life. Anytime you're going into a hard conversation, okay, and if you're not on YouTube, you can't see my hands, but I'm holding my hands separate from each other, okay? Whenever you're trying to make a deal or a negotiation or handle a conflict, the trick is not, oh, I've got to debate better them or convince them, these comps are lower, these comps are lower, you got to sell it for this. That's a me versus you mentality. You do not want to set that up. You want, I'm gonna put my hands next to each other. It's me and you versus the problem we're trying to solve. Okay. And, in a relationship, conflict could be a lot of things. Put that person, it's like, let that person feel like you're next to them, trying to figure it out with them, not I'm screaming at you from the other side of the table. How do we figure this out together? There's a price here. Let's get together and let's figure it out. And people are going to be more likely to work with you on that price if they feel like you see and understand their perspective. All right. Now, those are some what's, mirroring, labeling, tactical empathy. But now let's talk about the last one. That is the how. How can you do this? How can we tie this together? So these are examples of how this could play out. You ready? Dealer shows you a Michael Jordan rookie card. They show you this card, and then you mirror it. Man, this has got to be a tough one to move on. This has got to be a tough card to get rid of. The card that they hand you, even if they don't say, here's the card. Can I look at that? They hand it to you. You go, man, this is a beautiful card. This has got to be a tough one to get rid of. You are now letting them know, like, hey, I'm not just thinking about me here. I'm thinking of how this is making you feel. I'm thinking of how this selling of this card feels for you, okay? Now, let's say a dealer has a card. It's a Zion Williamson card, and they've been stuck with it for a while. They've had it for months. They can't get rid of it. They're stuck because they bought it for $1,000 and now it's selling for $200. And they're like, they know as soon as they officially let it go, they know the number they lost it for. And so some of the phrases you can use in those situations is, it sounds like you're ready to move on from this card, even though it's going to be hard to let go for that price. It sounds like you're ready to move on from this because every time you see it, it reminds you of how much it's dropped in value. You're saying it in a tone of, it seems like this is going to be tough for you. And then you let it sit. You let that dead air feel, and you let their brain write in the rest. Just say that, and then don't follow up with a number. Say that and let it sit. It sounds like you're ready to move this card. And you're letting that feeling sit with them, okay? And I'll give you another example. So let's say they're talking about a card and you're looking at it and they light up when they see this Luca Silver Prism. And they're like, man, that must have been an awesome card to rip. That must have been an amazing card to rip. Because a lot of what I've focused on is the tactical empathy of like, I feel the pain or feel the struggle you're in. But it's also okay to say, man, I bet that was an exciting card to pull from a pack. How cool was that? Here's the thing. All of these techniques, all of this, like the way you're wording things, where you're essentially saying, I'm right next to you, feeling your feelings alongside of you. No, it's not setting this card up to be, but it's not worth as much, but it's not worth as much. How many of us have gotten in a deal where we show them recent comps and that person gets aggravated because you just told them to their face, your card is not worth as much as you think it is. Not only did they find out their card's worth less because of, hopefully comparable comps, but now they're thinking, now I look overpriced. And now they're going to start getting defensive or frustrated. Very seldom do they just jump in and go, okay, fine, take it for that price. They're getting defensive because you're calling out those emotions and saying, look at what you did. It's like a dog that messes up on the floor and you're like, look at what you did wrong. With this, you're saying, man, I can see you're in a tough spot with this card. I can see how looking at this card might frustrate you, especially after those numbers. You're showing them that you see and understand what it's like being on their side of the table. And what that does is it sets the room. It sets the table. It sets that, what's that phrase we used at the beginning? You're reading the room and you're setting the tone. The tone is, hey, this ain't me and you, and I'm trying to get you down to the lowest price possible. You're setting the tone of, hey, I'm right here with you. Let's see what we can do with this card. Let's see how much money you can walk away with. I am on your team, and I'm going to try to help you out in this process. So that's Reading the Room, episode 1 of our negotiation series, and we'll follow up. Sports Cards Are Dope. I try to do it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm also probably going to turn this into a course when I get done with some like notes and bullet points and ideas and some phrases. And when it's done, if you're watching in the future, cool. If not, I'm going to put it on sportscardsaredope.com. It's where I have the podcast. So sportscardsaredope.com. I'm going to toss it up as a free course for anybody. If you're an educator, because I do a lot of stuff with educators, I'm going to put this up and I'm going to give it as a curriculum so you could actually work with this with your students if it's something that they work. Because negotiations, not just with sports cards, but with everything in life. I mean, kids are going to go out and get a job. Guess what you're doing when you get your first salary? Very often, unless it's dictated by the state, you're negotiating your salary. And so one of the first things you want to do is you want to let that person on the other side of the table know, I see and understand what you're going through. Let me see if I can be on your team to figure this out. But we're going to try to figure it out in a way that is helpful for us, but everybody walks away happy and cool. So there you go. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you like this. Sports Cars Are Dope podcast. We have a new podcast. Try every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, unless your boy gets busy with his job. And then I can't. Because I'm spending all our money on our rent. That's from a song. All right. Y'all be good. Stay sweet. And never stop collecting. Sports cars are dope. So are you. Later.